Welcome back to the MCU. I'm Marius, and this is my cinematic universe. And today we're talking about the Flux Capacitor from Factory Entertainment. And this is a really awesome piece of prop replica. I'm not sponsored by Factory Entertainment. I bought this with my own money, and it was a lot of money, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But I have to say that this is really, really cool. And they did a really, really good job with this. I had a talk with Steve over at Valor Replicas, who's the maker that actually designed the prototype for this release. So he had to go and do the research and try and figure out how he was going to make a prop replica for production for Factory Entertainment. And he went into a lot of detail about how the process went and how he managed to get something like this made and how screen accurate it is. If you are a prop replica enthusiast, you might know that there aren't very many flux capacitors out there, and there have never been many flux capacitors out there, and I don't think that there's ever been a licensed one. So if you are into licensed props, then this might be it. So this prop comes in two different flavors. The standard edition comes with the flux capacitor, obviously, the remote, and a little booklet. And it's $11.99 and it's limited to 1,000 pieces. The signature edition is $14.99. Comes with the same thing except a signed plaque by Christopher Lloyd, who played Dr. Emmett Brown in the Back to the Future series, was the inventor of the flux capacitor after he fell and hit his head on the sink. True story. So, what is this exactly? It is a 1-to-1 replica of the flux capacitor, and specifically it's the 1-to-1 replica of the flux capacitor from the A car. In Back to the Future and all the Back to the Futures, they had multiple vehicles. So they had the A car, the B car, and the C car, and I think maybe they had some stunt cars too, but the A car is the hero car, and that's the car that was used when it comes off the trailer. Doc Brown shows it to Marty for the first time. It's when Marty's inside the car and you see the flux capacitor. Most of the time that's the A car, and the flux capacitors were like hand built, so they might vary a little bit, but this one is modeled after the A car one. The way that this one was built, and I talked to Steve about it, was they unfortunately weren't able to get access to the actual flux capacitor because the A car got restored. There's an awesome documentary about that called Back in Time, and if you're a Back to the Future fan and you haven't seen this documentary, I recommend you go watch it, because they go and find and restore the A car and to do a full restoration because it was sitting on the back lot of Universal Studios for, decades, and it was just rotting away. I remember when I was there, this was like 2001. We did the studio backlot tour, and I remember seeing the Back to the Future car sitting there, just sitting outside, and not looking great. And that car ended up at the Peterson Automotive Museum, and I've been there, and I have seen the car, and it looks great now that it's been restored. Unfortunately, Steve wasn't able to get access to the car because it's now worth a lot of money. It's sitting in a museum and it probably just wasn't very practical to do. But Steve was able to get in touch with one of the guys that were doing the restoration, the one from the documentary, and he got all the measurements of the flux capacitor, all the different dimensions and everything of every piece. So this is probably as close to a screen accurate replica as you can. These pieces up here on the top have been remade. They've been 3D printed, designed, 3D printed, and then molded for production. Some of these are found parts, but the parts have never been found. So they kind of have to go by just a lot of images from the documentary, from photos, from set pictures, and everything. But it has been replicated as close as anybody can really get. The one thing that stood out to me when I first looked at it was, what do you call it, the time circuit, the actual flux capacitor, and that looks really, really cool. I've seen other ones like miniature ones and stuff that people have made where it looks like LEDs going down here, not some sort of like filament tube that we used back in the day. It feels and looks really, really, really good. Immediately when I started it up, that's the first thing I noticed, and I thought it looked really good. Another thing is that it feels really solid. It's heavy. And you know what they say, if it's heavy, it's expensive. And that is true in this scenario for sure. Why don't we weigh it and see how much it actually weighs? 13 pounds. That is pretty impressive. It feels just really solid and well made. You know, this is not going to break. This is going to last. And it has been made in mind that it's not just going to hang on a wall or sit on a shelf. It actually runs off of DC power, 12-volt DC power. So if you have a DeLorean Back to the Future time machine, you can install this in your car, run it off of DC power, and it'll work. And with the remote, you can do all the cool stuff. You can turn the sound on and off. Or you can run the time sequence. And fun fact, all the sound effects that are in this flux capacitor are actual sound effects from the movie. So Steve was able to get access to the master tracks from the movie where you could just strip away the dialogue and all the other sound effects and just get the sounds from the flux capacitor and extract those so that they would work with this flux capacitor with the lights and the time traveling timing working perfectly. So if you're looking for one, I think this is a home run. It feels kind of like, I wouldn't say homemade, but it does feel like something that was bespoke and not just like something mass produced. These graphics are from an old school Dymo label maker. And you can see on mine, the T here is a little faded. And I may or may not update that, but you know, this is the one Doc Brown made for me. So it looks the way it does. Just looking at it straight on, it is very, very accurate. It has the look that a flux capacitor should have. Nice, solid builds. All these pipes are plastic. They are made to look the way they do look in real life in the movie. On the side here, you have these latches that will obviously open the Stalin case. So this is based off of something called a Stalin case. It's made for this replica and it looks really good. The latches, I noticed, and I asked Steve about this, and I've seen that some other people have commented on them, that they don't like pull the lid close, but when they're latched, the lid isn't really loose. So it doesn't feel like it's supposed to like pull it tight for like a proper seal, but that's something I noticed, but it's not bothering me. It doesn't feel loose, and it just feels solid and good. The one thing that isn't screen accurate, or we don't really know if it's screen accurate because I don't think we see this side of the flux capacitor. Let me know in the comments if we do, but I know that this side is the passenger side and it is obscured by other things in the car and we don't really get that angle. But here are the control panels, and maybe it would have been nice to only have the remote, or maybe the controls could have been on the underside. That's what I thought at first before I received it, but then yeah, it's got holes on the other side, so you can't do that. So this is the only thing that's not super screen accurate, but it's there for your convenience. If you get really crazy about it, you could just take off the labels, remove the buttons and fill it in. And I think you'll be able to match this gray color and you can pretend like this never happened. The one thing that Steve said that he wished he could have done differently or that he would change is this volume knob. So somebody suggested it should be with the volume knob from... somebody suggested that this should be the volume knob from the guitar that Marty McFly uses at the end of the movie. That could be a fun little mod to do. But it's still, it looks the part. It looks like something Doc Brown would put in, I think. It also runs off of batteries. Here is something I've had some issues with this. The batteries, at least the batteries I have, these rechargeable batteries, they feel very, very tight. So you have to like squeeze them in there, and then usually you can kind of like roll the batteries back and forth, right? And they're kind of loose in there, but once they're in here, they're just like, they're tight. They're not going anywhere. You can't move them. Getting them out is really hard. And even putting this battery door, the battery door now closes just fine, but with the batteries in there, it's really hard to close. I don't know why that is, but it's been a little bothersome and a little difficult. Also, I had fresh batteries in there, rechargeables, and I used them when I talked to Steve. Now, a week later, the battery seems to have died, or there's not enough juice in them to run it. So it seems to be draining batteries, even though it's not on. I have to do some more testing to find out what that's about. Be aware that the batteries might run out if you leave them inside. So maybe the 12 volt is the easiest solution. So moving on to the actual flux capacitor itself. Again, it just feels really solid, feels really nice, quality work. And if you've seen my Men in Black video, the build quality of this one is a lot better than the Men in Black neuralizer. Even though those ones are really nice too, this one just really oozes quality to me. When we open this up, we're gonna see a couple of things that aren't screen accurate, but it's one of those things where you don't really know what the actual prop looked like. And even if you did, you wouldn't want to recreate it the way it was done back then because technology has evolved and this is just a better solution. So on the inside here, we have LEDs. So these LEDs are for the time travel sequence. There's also some LEDs up in each corner. On the screen used version, these were some sort of filament regular light bulbs. And those things get hot, really hot, and they burn out, and it's just, it's not practical to have in this day and age. So that has been changed. And this color is accurate to the screen used ones. It was more of a white or bluer kind of color, while this is the very standard yellow tungsten incandescent light. And as you can see again, the flux capacitor itself, the lights, the timing, it really looks nice. Fun fact, all these parts are made. So none of these are actual found parts because that would be kind of impractical to look for all these vintage parts, even though some might still exist. These are all made to look like the actual parts. But because Steve was able to get access to, well, the documentary and photo assets and everything from the guys that worked on it, each of these capacitors or whatever they are have a little sticker on them, and each sticker has a serial number that's unique to them, and it's the same serial number as the A-car flux capacitor. So each one has a different serial number, and it's the one that's in the car. So, you know, this kind of attention to detail is awesome. And I don't know what more to say about it. It just looks really nice. There's nothing that stands out to me as being just low quality. I guess if you're nitpicky, you could say that these things, whatever they are, they were probably made from brass originally, and these are plastic or resin, and they are painted brass. But you're only gonna notice this if you get really close or you start touching it. But it's a replica. It's not, you know, the actual item. So I think that's okay. It doesn't look bad. It looks like it's brass. It looks like it's supposed to be like this. We can run the time travel sequence again, and there you go. And obviously it has the sound, the time salute from the master files from the movie. And another thing that it does, which I'm assuming is just a side effect of an artifact of all the circuits and everything that's in here, but it does have this like mechanical sound when it recycles or starts a sequence again, like that. There is this sound that's happening where it feels like circuit opening or closing. I don't know what that is, if it's an electronic sound or if it's an actual mechanical sound, but it sounds cool. So that is the Flux Capacitor from Factory Entertainment. It is a really cool piece of prop replica. It might be my nicest piece. I mean, the Regal Robot Chalice, the Holy Grail Chalice, is also a really nice replica, but this is nicer. It functions, it blinks, and it makes noises, and yeah, it is really cool. So if you're in the market for a flux capacitor, this seems like it'll fit the bill. And it is a lot of money. It's $1,200 plus tax, or $1,500 plus tax for the signature edition. But I was looking around and to see what other things are out there. I saw some fan-made ones that were selling or sold in the past, and the list price was about the same. And this was years ago. So I don't think the price point is really that bad. If you're going to start building one yourself, this Stalin case, which is the electronics box, fuse box, breaker box, whatever it is, that alone retails for like $300+. And then you gotta get all the electronics. You need to get the sounds. You need to make these light things. And I don't think you can make these things to this quality for, you know, like not spending a ton of money. I wouldn't think so. You need to get all these things. Sure, some of these can be 3D printed and you can be sanding and doing a lot of stuff. And also it being licensed, I think it's a good deal. Expensive, but a good deal. So I'm happy that I have one, and you're going to be seeing this somewhere on this set, and it's going to be there for a long time. Maybe check out the video of Steve from Valor Replicas and the talk I had with him about the whole process of making this and how he managed to make this as screen accurate as he could possibly get it.